I am thrilled to be here with you today and to talk about my mother because she truly is the inspiration of my life. And she knew the difference between coping and living. So often I cannot call her a Holocaust survivor because she came out of it with a thriving spirit. She used every opportunity to embrace life to its fullest. And so I'm going to talk about 4 principles that I learned from her. I'll tell a story that's connected with it, and I will then let you know what these principles really do for our lives. So here's the first one. In every single human being, there's a spark of God deep within. We are all created, B'Tselem Elohim. And the story I want to tell you is that when my parents, in the beginning of the war, living in Antwerp, Belgium, the Nazis coming in, they were rounded up and by a Nazi shoved into a truck. And so the Nazi was doing schnell, 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 pushing people in, and my mother was in that line. And she thought about that. We are all created, but B'Tselem Elohim, there's a spark in each of us. And she decided she was gonna look at that man with that understanding, and that she was gonna look into his eyes in that way. And so when she got in the front of that truck, she took a deep breath, she looked deep into his eyes, and she said, "Let us go." And he did. That whole group went back home. She had touched him there where he, in a Nazi uniform, was a human. The next principle is that all of life is a blessing, but the blessing sometimes is in the hidden realm. We don't know that the event that just occurred is a blessing, but that we can rely on the fact that all is well. And so the story I want to tell you is that my parents then decided that it was time for them to travel to Switzerland. They wanted to run away and actually land in a country where they knew there was no war. And so they took a train. And while on the road already, my mother realized she had left her false passport on the dining room table. She has no papers. She's on her way. After she felt terrified, a question she would ask is, how long should a person be terrified? And she made a decision how long she was going to be terrified. And after that, she decided, this is actually a blessing. It's in the hidden realm. I may never know the blessing that it is, but maybe I will. When my parents ultimately got to Switzerland in 1944, my Aunt Hadassah was there. And my Aunt Hadassah, my mother's sister, was there because she lived in Amsterdam. And in 1942, she was so scared to live alone, she took the train to Antwerp to be with her sister and her brother-in-law. She came in with her key into their apartment, but she could see that they had fled. But on the dining room table was a passport. She changed the picture, put her picture there, and with that passport, she got immediately to Switzerland. My parents had quite an adventure of hiding and camps. She got to Switzerland in 1942. And when the word was out that her sister had landed in Switzerland, she came to visit my mother and said, you know, that book that you left on the dining room table, I read that book all the way to Switzerland. And so my mother, at some level, when she decided how long should a person be terrified, and she put an end, made a decision about the terror, and then went into this atmosphere of blessing, she already in some way had understood that something miraculous could have happened with that passport. She saved her sister's life. The third principle is that all of us live in a human web. We are interconnected and interdependent. And Albert Einstein actually said our separation is an optical illusion of consciousness. And so my mother understood this. And when my father and mother got to France, they had to get off the train and somehow found a place to hide in Nice, in the south of France. And there were 7 Jews in a cellar. And when they found out that the Nazis were coming into Nice, my mother had an idea. She would open a phone book. She would put her finger on the name of a doctor, and she would go see that doctor. And she would ask him to give her a certificate that my father was gravely ill, needed to be transported to a hospital in Cannes, and a driver and nurses' uniforms so they could be taken. So she got out of hiding. She walked. She's blonde and beautiful, and she walked in the streets and found the doctor and explained to him she wanted this certificate and she wanted this ambulance. And the doctor was a very good man, and he listened. And when she was done with her request, he said to her gently, caringly, "I so would love to help you, but I can't. I signed an oath. And in that oath, I said I would never lie about a patient. And your husband isn't ill." My mother looked at him, and from the depth of her neshama, the depth of her soul, she said to him, "You are right. My husband isn't ill. Humanity is ill. And if you don't sign this certificate and give us this ambulance, 7 people, me included, will die of the illness of humanity." And there she gave this doctor an opportunity. He could stay within the small square within which he was living, in which he had signed an oath, and he could remain in the integrity of that small square. Or he could decide to step out into a much bigger realm, a realm where you love life so much you are willing to risk your own to save the one of another. And he made the decision, and he signed the certificate. And my father on a stretcher in an ambulance, my mother with a nurse's uniform, the other Jews, and a driver went to the next city. And so the idea here is that we are one web. My mother knew she was one web with that doctor. And so she spoke to him from the place of one web, interdependent, interconnected. When the war was over and my parents went back to Antwerp, Belgium, with me as a little baby, my mother sent a letter to the doctor. And she said, "You remember me, I'm sure, the one from the ambulance. I'm back home. We've survived. We have a baby. Thank you for my life." And the doctor wrote back, and he said, "Thank you for my bigger life." Because after he did the ambulance project, he continued to save Jewish lives in the most creative ways. Number 4, we are completely responsible for the energetic space that we live in. So my parents were apprehended in Cannes. They were in Vichy France camps. My mother organized an escape, walked with my father through the Alps, got pregnant with me, and when they got to Switzerland, the border was closed to refugees. And so my mother made a decision. I'm throwing myself into Switzerland. I am not accepting a closed border. And if I die on the other side, I'm dying on this side for sure. And so she threw herself. My father got smuggled in a few days later. And she got hurt when she fell and was taken to a hospital. And in this hospital, the doctor decided he loves this little Hungarian woman, and he allowed us to stay there much longer than she needed so that she could recuperate while pregnant. When she got to the refugee camp, she arrived in an atmosphere that was actually very bad because the head of that camp was a sadistic man, and he would have the women stand at roll call. There wasn't enough food. There were women pregnant. There were women with babies. My mother decided she's taking charge of the energetic space she's living in. And so she decided to find a partner for a hunger strike. Now, it's not easy to find somebody for a hunger strike when people are hungry, as everybody was there. But she did find a person, because if one person does a hunger strike, it's a crazy person. But if two, it is a strike, and the Red Cross would come to investigate. And so there were my mother and her partner doing a hunger strike. And before the Red Cross could arrive, the head of the camp called them in his office. And my mother sat down, and he says, "I didn't tell you to sit down. Are you not afraid of me?" And she looked at him the way she looks at people, to that spark that is in there. And she said, "No, I'm not afraid of you. I have Yirat Hashem. I'm afraid of God, but not of you." He said to the other woman, "Sit down." He had to be in charge. He said, "What do you want?" And my mother again did the eyes to the core of the being. And she said to him, "Look, I want to be a partner with you in reorganizing this camp so it can be a place where the Jewish women regain their dignity. Then it cannot be roll call. It's too reminiscent of the terrible place they were before. There has to be good food so they're not hungry. There has to be an atmosphere in which people's self-esteem can come back to them slowly but surely." And in the way she looked at him, he accepted to become a partner. And together with her, they reorganized the camp so that it became a place where the women could have their pregnancies, their births, their babies, and regain their dignity as a human being. And so the idea is we are 100% responsible for the energetic space in which we live. Now, the unifying principle of all four is the distinction my mother understood completely between coping with a situation and living in a situation. And what she decided at every step is that she will live. She will not cope and survive, she will live. And as a result, the woman who raised me was a woman who was capable of thriving and inspired every step of my life. I am thrilled today to have a chance to honor her the way I just did. And I'm going to take a very deep breath because I've said what I wanted to say, and I'm going to pass it back to Adrienne.
Okay. Hedy, sorry, I just have to take my jaw off the ground. Hedy, your mother is extraordinary, extraordinary. But some questions have come in, and frankly, they crossed my mind as well. So please answer them for me to the best of your ability. For those of us who are not blessed with the clearly elevated nature that your late mother, may her soul have an ascension, was blessed with, is it possible to develop the good eye, the ayin tov, that she seemed to have naturally? I mean, in a world of nature and nurture, you probably got it too, because that was how you were raised. And even if you didn't come out just like your mother, at least the nurture was there. What if it's not your nature and it wasn't your nurture? How do you develop that kind of eye? What sort of strategies or tricks can you do?
I love this question. And I tell you why I love it, because a basic understanding that my mother had was the distinction between the fact that as humans, our essence is good. Our essence is kind. Our essence is fun. Our essence is creative. That's our essence. We're born that way.
Everybody? Everybody?
Everybody is born with a human essence. And you can see it in little people before nurture or the wrong nurture comes in. You know, they trust, they smile. If you've got a little baby in a cart in a supermarket, okay, we don't go to supermarkets right now with Corona, Shmorona, but a little baby in a cart in a supermarket, you can see an elderly person who has hardening of the attitudes, you know.
Oh, I know that
hardening of the attitudes. Their face is all scrunched up and they're walking. And they look at that baby and the baby looks at them. And what the baby is saying is, I see the spark in you. And the baby smiles, and that person suddenly just smiles for a moment, breathes deeply, and reconnects with their essence in that moment. And so
you're so right.
You've seen that a million times. Yeah. And so knowing that our essence is there, intact, even though it may be covered up by years of survival, really survival, and survival of some tough things. I do know that inside is that essence. And the knowledge of that essence allows us to take moments like the one in the supermarket or in nature or with a dog. You know, sometimes all it takes is to do to a dog and you're back in your essence.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So next question, given that this is true, that God gave us all this essence of awe and wonder before the hardening of the categories, or whatever, whatever that was. What if you're committed to living your life that way? We get off this Zoom call, and all of us on this call say, okay, I am definitely going to become Hedy's mother. I'm going to do it. I'm going to fake it till I make it. But you've got somebody living in the house with you who is determined to undermine with negativity. And I'm telling you, Hedy, I've seen this happen too. What do you do with the hater among you, the one who's trying to undermine it all?
You know, your question reminds me of a story of two brothers. And one brother is running after the other. He's got a stick and he's banging. And the other brother gets into a room and closes the door and locks it. And he then looks through the hole and says, I can see you're still there trying to hit me. You know, it depends where we put our focus. This little kid put his focus in the hole there to see his brother continuing to hit. He could have gone to the window and looked out at what now we see, for example, the burgeoning spring, the thriving nature. He could have looked at many things, but he was so focused on that brother who hits him. You know, out of our coping, we focus exactly where our trouble lies. Instead of, hey, look out the window, look wherever you can look, where you get reminded of how you are in charge 100% of the energetic space that you create.
So you're saying that just a little bit of distraction and looking away from the source of what's driving you crazy and putting your attention on something else brings you back to your natural essence?
Right, something inspiring. You talked about inspiration in the beginning.
Right.
You must put your attention on something inspiring. So, for example, Corona Shmorona, we look outside and nature is thriving right now. You know, the trees are burgeoning, the flowers, the colors, and you feel that, hey, nature doesn't get stopped by a virus. Nature, and that is our nature too, continues to thrive in all circumstance.
You're okay. There's so many questions coming in. I keep looking over here because this is my question. All I just want to do is look at you and I want to fall into your face. There's something about you have this light. Is it really possibly as simple as all that? Is it really as simple as deciding with bone deep clarity that every human being, including the evil among us, have a core of them that is an infant or a new soul, and we search for it, and even if they won't let us see it, we can go and look somewhere else? Is it that simple?
And look where we get inspiration. It
So
is
it's the
never someone
inspiration.
else. It could be Tehillim. It could be Psalms.
Uh-huh.
You know, from the narrowness, I called out to you, Hashem, and you responded with expansiveness. Viktor Frankl said he said that prayer morning and evening in Auschwitz. Why? Because he wanted to remember the expansiveness inside of the narrowness. And so he looked where is the expansiveness? Hashem will give me a way to see it. And every single day, that's what he did.
So you're telling me that it's not going to just work for me to go back on Netflix and watch another season of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. She inspires me. She inspires me. Okay, I got another question for you because I don't want to run out of time. Okay, it says, oh, first of all, there's a comment for you from Tana. She says, my bubby was in 5 camps and worked by force with the angel of death, oy vey, in Auschwitz as a nurse. She was able to save so many lives. And in the early 90s in Palm Springs, in a grocery store, she heard her name being screamed. Long story short, it was one of the women she saved from the camp. And just like my bubby, your mom was a light and a blessing. Did your mother ever live to see again any of the people that she had been touched by or she touched during the war?
First of all, thank you for bringing that Bubba into our lecture here. It's such an honor, really. And so, mwah, to the Bubba. You know, there was a woman in Antwerp, Belgium, where I grew up, who told me, your mother saved my life. She made me laugh when I thought I was frozen.
Oh, so laughter. Tell me a little bit about laughter.
So my mother really understood that in order to take all of life, to really live it fully, we need to be able to hold the sad and the glad together.
Ooh, I like that. The sad and the glad.
And the glad together. We put the salt on the challah because we're remembering the destruction of the temple when we are taking in the sweetness of our first bite of challah. So we are taught really as Jews to hold the sad and the glad together. And so my mother in the camp, she organized a fashion show. This was a transit camp.
Oh, I love her.
Clothing that came from the Red Cross that was horrendous with holes and just disgusting clothing. She said, that's the perfect box for a fashion show. And there, between the barracks, when they came back from work, there was a fashion show. And so she understood you must hold the simcha with the difficulty.
Oh, just like Moses carried the broken tablets and the hole in the Mishkan. So then in the ark of our hearts, we have to carry both the broken and the whole.
Indeed.
Can you give us a tip for being able to sit with both? Or perhaps that's what you said at the beginning. Maybe that's just maturity, is the ability to sit in both.
It's our capacity with time to hold everything life has to offer. The really tough, which breaks our heart, and the really deep and beautiful and transcendent, which makes us fly.
Oh, you know, I'm sorry, but you are physically, spiritually, emotionally, and intellectually gorgeous. I can't take my eyes off of you. I wish I could just jump through the camera and like give you a huge hug.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Corona hugs all around. Oh, you're fabulous. And I'm sorry to say this, but I know that the hundreds of women watching are also wondering about your necklace and your ring because you're fabulous looking too. Okay, I cannot thank you enough. I really feel like you've given us those, and I'm wondering if we can get from you the copy of those 4 strategies. And to anybody who's interested, what we'll do is we will make it available through Momentum to be able to reference that and keep it close to our minds. So just, you know, leave your email in the chat if you would like us to have that send. And you know, can you guide us quickly into how to hold opposites together, like the salt and the sweet, happy and sad? This comes from Rabbi Claire Ginsburg Goldstein. Can you give us just a tiny little way to hold that?
Ooh, it's to understand that life is not a problem to be solved. It's an adventure to be lived. Because if it's a problem to be solved, we will always focus on that which is tough. But if it's an adventure to be lived, we carry everything life offers us.
Oh, Hedy. Oh, your mother is kvelling in heaven right now.
I am really thinking about that.
Oh,
She's complaining because of the things you told me. She said, that's it. That's my Hedy.
I'm so grateful.